Okay. Hello, I'm Jackie Flavin, Customer Insights Leader with Demco, and this is Open Book, our weekly conversation series with industry experts about how they're navigating COVID-19 challenges. And today I'm joined by Lauren White and Megan Statz, Director and Assistant Director for Ruth Culver Community Library in Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin. Super close to Demco's headquarters in Madison. So thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
We're so lucky to have you here to talk about all the awesome COVID era programming that you've been doing, especially the take-home kits that you've created for your children and your teen programming. We know that take-home programming can be pretty overwhelming to get started amidst everything else that's going on, but it's such a great way to reach patrons. And we're really hopeful that sharing your experience and all the best practices you've learned today will help make it a lot more accessible to our audience. So maybe to start, could you give us a sense of what programming looked like at the library before the pandemic?
Sure. So prior to the pandemic, we were fairly program heavy, especially for the littlest children. We regularly have 3 story times a week plus a baby program. And then during the summers, we always do Teen Tuesdays, which Megan takes care of. And then we would also have performers on Mondays, but of course, all of that has changed now. So Megan can talk a little bit more about her programs, I suppose, and what they typically look like.
Yeah, so for teens, we would start in like the 2nd or 3rd week of June, and every Tuesday night we would have an event at the library. And then in August, we would do Maker Mondays, which would kind of be that tween age from like 3rd grade through 5th or 6th grade.
Awesome. And then mid-March came and all of a sudden everything kind of grinded to a halt. What was that transition period like? That crazy first couple weeks, like how did you move everything to what it is now?
I mean, I can speak from the standpoint of us transitioning to working from home, and then Megan, I suppose, can talk a little bit about what her process was like, but it all happened very, very suddenly. We knew that we were going to have to close, but we weren't quite sure when that would be or what it would look like. Initially, I remember on a Friday, I was thinking like, okay, next week we have to stop all of our programs. We can't do those anymore. And then I think by Saturday, I was like, nope, like we're gonna have to close. As soon as the library board meeting is done on Monday night, we'll close going into Tuesday. So it happened very quickly, and thankfully we have a great support system within our library system, the South Central Library System. And so almost immediately they started setting up meetings for youth services, adult services, directors. So we were able to idea share and try to get a handle on things pretty quickly, especially since we knew we were going to be going into summer reading program in a few short weeks.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
that's awesome that you could idea share with people. I'm sure that was super helpful and therapeutic too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Megan, I'm sorry I cut you off.
It was interesting too, because I had not yet started planning for teen programming for the summer. We had school year programming still planned that ended up getting canceled, but it was kind of enough time for me then to stop and think, how could we make changes going into the summer?
Yeah. And so now, I mean, it's hard to believe it now, it's July. Have things changed a lot since the early versions of what you were doing, or have they stayed relatively the same?
It seems like every week something changes in terms of workflow in the library. But in terms of the take-home things, we've kind of found a good model and are sticking with it a bit.
Nice.
And I will add that initially, Megan had just started doing the take and make kits for teens. And then when our children's librarian announced her retirement, Megan was looking for additional ways to be able to support kids at home. And so that's when she decided to go ahead and create those Maker Monday kits instead. And so now we're distributing those as well.
So cool. And can you tell us like some examples of the kits that you've put together?
Yes, so for the Maker Mondays, last week was our first one, and we did mini piñatas. And I have one of the bags. This is this week. So this week we're doing light up wands. So I just kind of have stapled to the front a list of the contents, if anyone's concerned what might be in it for younger kids. And then inside are directions, and then most of the supplies you need. I try not to do things that would require too much from home, but you might need like a scissors or some glue. But wherever possible, I put everything in the bag with directions. And we announce on Facebook Monday morning what the project's going to be for the week. And one weekend, I think it's been pretty popular. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people just being grateful to have something to do with their kids. We had also made the decision not to take our performers virtual because we had gotten feedback in our community that they didn't want more screen time.
Right.
So that's kind of also what made us decide to do the take-home bags. And for the Teen Tuesdays, those we started in June. So I did 3 different sessions. You could pick which supplies you wanted for each session. So it would be 3 weeks in a session. You can make your choices for, we did, the first one was candy mosaics. So you could pick if you wanted M&Ms or if you wanted Skittles, and just different choices like that. And for the teens, we also offered a Zoom option. So normally our Teen Tuesdays are at 6:30 Tuesday nights. So for anyone who's interested, we do a Zoom version at 6:30 on Tuesdays.
Very cool. So a nice way to disconnect people. You know, even though like we're on Zoom a lot, it's still nice, I'm sure, for the teens that are used to seeing each other often to connect a little bit. That's great. That's a great option to complement the take-home programming.
Mm-hmm. And one of our Teen Tuesdays was a Minute to Win It challenge. So that's definitely more fun being able to do it with other people, albeit virtually.
Yeah, totally.
And I will say too that Megan has been really considerate when putting these bags together, because a lot of times we get kids who are a little young, but we don't want to say like, no, you can't do this, or they have siblings that are younger. So for example, like this week with her light up wand, she actually did a secondary version for the kids that are a little bit younger. And so it's just a bubble wand instead with pipe cleaners and beads and stuff. So I really appreciate that she's been able to adapt and recognize that, like, oh, some of these things are maybe too advanced for kids who are still wanting to do them. So let's figure out a way to do it that's going to be age appropriate.
That's so thoughtful.
I think that helps too, like why I'm kind of just taking it 1 week at a time rather than announcing all of them in advance, because then I can change it up if I need to. And I'm also using a lot of supplies that we already had in the library, because what library doesn't have random storage in their craft area? So it's a way to use up some of those things that you're like, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah, I love it. And are you, so I'm like, I'm a planner, and it like almost gives me anxiety to not know what I'm going to be doing in 2 weeks. Is it sort of your natural mode to be able to like be agile and think of things like as you need them, or is this sort of out of your comfort zone?
I'm definitely a planner also, but I think I've been doing this long enough that I can kind of look at where things need to change. So I have like the general ideas for everything we're going to do all summer in my head, but you know, if I find out, oh, it's a lot younger kids doing it than what I had thought, then I can change it, or I can put in a secondary option.
That's great. That's kind of the only way to operate these days. I mean, there's so much information changing all the time, and libraries, including yours, have changed their services around a bunch since March. So I think everyone deserves a medal in last minuteness, you know. I'm wondering, like, where are good places to look for ideas? Are there good social media groups or professional groups that you like?
I use a lot of listservs, either through ALA or through our library system. A lot of Pinterest too. I know there are a lot of library program blogs and things like that. So sometimes I take them from there, but A lot of it is Pinterest. A lot of it is stuff that I've done previous years that I know will work well to be able to pack up and take home. And as Lauren mentioned, South Central Library System have been doing youth services check-ins, which was really nice during the downtime. That, you know, it let you think about things for when you would be able to get back in your libraries.
Yeah.
Megan too is really good about testing out potential projects with her nieces and nephews. She often will take the things home, let them try it out, see how they like it. And one of the most exciting things I think that she shared when she was taking the piñata home was that her nephew, who's typically not interested in sort of arts and crafts things whatsoever, was 100% on board with this because A, it had candy, and B, there was a level of destruction involved. So that was really sweet to hear, but she sort of has a built-in test audience, which is great.
Yeah.
And that's really nice for me because, like we've said, I normally do teen programming and adult programming, so this is not necessarily my comfort zone in terms of age.
And everything that you're doing and libraries are doing is like so needed. I mean, I'm a reader and a parent, and I've never needed my library so much. And I'm wondering, like, how is this, and there's so many personal stresses for you, I'm sure, given everything going on. What is this, what has this whole experience been like for you as librarians? I mean, are you like, I mean, what does it feel like? This must be such an interesting part of your whole librarianship career. I'm just curious what it feels like.
So for me, it is beyond anything I could have imagined that I would go through in life at this point. And certainly in my career, I never imagined a pandemic happening. You know, I think that for me, while it's been very stressful at times because we're trying to decide what is going to be safe for our community and what's safe for the staff, I will say that staff overwhelmingly here have been incredibly adaptive, which has made the transition and process much easier. Like Megan said, you know, things change week to week, how we're doing things for a whole host of reasons, and they're really great about just being like, okay, this is what we're doing now, understood, got it. And they're just really great troopers. So that's really aided in managing the transition for myself, is having a great staff that is willing to buckle in and ride along. But certainly it's brought a different level of services than I imagined. It's changed services dramatically from what we're used to doing. But again, patrons have been very understanding and very excited to have library services back once we're able to roll them out. And, you know, even when we had to do things like mandate masks, which we were a little bit concerned about because we hear, you know, it's on the news, people are upset if you ask them to do something or require something. And we actually got a lot of really positive feedback that was like, thank you for doing this, I'm a transplant survivor. Aww. Or, you know, thank you for like helping us keep the community safe. So that was really reassuring to us in times when we were unsure of how it was going to go over, because no other library in our county at this point, well, maybe one, is requiring masks. And so it was sort of uncharted territory and we didn't know how it was going to go.
Yeah, you certainly are in an interesting position. You mentioned before we started this conversation that you're right on the border of another county that has sometimes different sort of policies, right?
Yeah, so actually, as of today, Dane County, which is just right across the bridge from us, implemented mandatory masks countywide. And so we are in an interesting position because a lot of people who live in our community work in Madison or vice versa. So knowing that there's an increased risk because these people are moving between the two communities, it does put us in a position where we have to be a little more cautious than if we were located in a different part of the county that didn't see as much transmission between the two communities. So it is a precarious place to be in terms of our location.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear that initial reactions have been positive. That's really great. I'm glad. I know that a lot of libraries haven't been having that experience necessarily. So I'm really, really glad to hear that that's been your experience.
Yeah, we're very thankful for it as well. I think it really just speaks to the community that we live in and work in, and that they are very supportive of, you know, what we need to do at this time.
Yeah. And Megan, I'll throw the question to you. How has this experience been for you from your perspective as a librarian?
So it's certainly been different. You know, normally in the summer you have all kinds of kids in, there's lots of excitement, and it's definitely scaled back. It's strangely quiet sometimes in the library, but people have been, yeah, very appreciative of what we have been doing. And it's also, you know, in a way, it's a summer that we get to try new things. We've changed how we're doing our reading program. We're making it more, we are using an online app. So it's been good to see how we can change things maybe going forward, even in years where things are maybe back to normal. We found too that the reading goals that we've set, which we based on what we've done in previous summers, are being reached much quicker than usual. So
that's great.
It's nice to see kids are at home reading and they're excited about it. So
yeah, I hope that a lot of people, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I've thought this for a while, but librarians do so much for the community, and I really hope that that is recognized more as we move through the pandemic. I mean, it's just never been more clear how much libraries serve their communities, and I do think there's going to be good, you know, that comes from this, and not to minimize any of the tough stuff that's happening, but there are some bright spots, and I think, you know, we all have permission to do things differently now, which can be great. I'm wondering, like, and Megan, you were touching on this. I'm wondering what you see as like the long-term positive outcomes. Like, are you going to do, you know, do you see yourself doing programming in a whole different way? Or, you know, is there one particular thing that you've tried that you think is like really great for the library, or just any bright spot at all that you see? I think that might be a really great place to end our conversation.
Well, so I touched on the summer reading app that we're using this year, which I really like. It's really cut down on our paper usage, which is great. I think it allows more people to participate because you don't physically need to get to the library as often. And maybe in terms of programming, maybe we will offer more things that can be take home, because, you know, a lot of kids in our area can't necessarily get to the library themselves. So if we can pack up stuff that they can take home, you know, 3 weeks worth at a time, that might be something that we can continue to do. I know that we're reaching more kids with the Teen Tuesday programs than normally come in the summer. So that's been nice too.
That's awesome.
From my perspective, I think one bright thing that comes from this is I'm seeing a big sense of connectedness within our community, specifically when it comes to library things. I feel more connected to the public than I think I have in the past, and maybe that's because I'm getting a lot more personal emails, not necessarily thanking me for anything in particular, but just saying like, hey, I want to put this item on hold, or what's going on with delivery. I think that for the patrons who use our library, they're still saying, you know, like, we appreciate you, we support you, like, how can we help? And that's been really comforting to see during this chaotic time, that they're still there and they still value the institution, even if everything that we do has changed significantly.
That's really great. I'm really glad, and you guys are doing so many awesome things, and I'm so glad that your patrons know that. And I really appreciate you sharing your story, and I am really hopeful that people that listen and watch this can take good bits from it and make things work at their libraries as well. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.